February 27, 2026. A retired U.S. Air Force Major General walks out of his home in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He leaves behind his phone, his prescription glasses, his wearable devices, and he is never seen again. His name was William Neal McCasland, and when his disappearance hit the internet, something broke loose, because people started digging, and what they found was far worse than one missing man. Before we go deeper, if you're new here, subscribe to Past Shock right now, because this is exactly the kind of story we live for. Dark, real, unexplained. Hit subscribe and let's get into it. William Neal McCasland was not some random retired soldier. He was a 68-year-old former Major General, the 7th Commander of the Air Force Research Laboratory at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, one of the most secretive military installations in America, a place that has been connected to classified aerospace research for decades. And his name had already surfaced years earlier in connection with a controversial UFO-related organization tied to billionaire Robert Bigelow, a man who once told 60 Minutes on national television that he was absolutely convinced extraterrestrials exist and that they are here, now. So when McCasland vanished without a trace and official channels offered nothing useful, the internet went to work, because people quickly realized this wasn't the first time someone connected to sensitive research had disappeared or died. This is where the story gets deeply uncomfortable. Online communities started compiling names, and the list they built was not small. Let's go through the cases. July 2023. Michael David Hicks, age 59, a research scientist at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. He worked on some of NASA's most celebrated missions, DART, Dawn, Deep Space One. He authored over 80 peer-reviewed scientific papers. He died. No dramatic circumstances reported publicly, but his name became the first entry on the list. Then, July 4th, 2024, Frank Mywald, age 61, a principal investigator at JPL, overseeing Earth observing and space instrumentation programs, died in Los Angeles. 2 JPL scientists, both dead, within roughly a year of each other. Then, December 2025, Nuno Loureiro, age 47, director of MIT's Plasma Science and Fusion Center, an expert in fusion and plasma physics, shot and killed at his home in Brookline, Massachusetts. Authorities identified a suspect, a former classmate with a known personal grudge, who also carried out a mass shooting at Brown University the day before. Personal motive identified suspect. Case closed, officially. But conspiracy communities didn't move on, because for them, the pattern was already forming. Then, February 16th, 2026, Carl Grillmeyer, age 67, an astrophysicist at the California Institute of Technology, a man renowned for studying the search for water on planets outside our solar system, shot and killed outside his rural home in Llano, California. Authorities arrested a suspect who reportedly didn't even know him. Random violence, or so they said. Then, June 22nd, 2025, Monica Razor, age 60, director of materials processing at JPL, co-inventor of a superalloy used in advanced aerospace manufacturing. She disappeared while hiking the Mount Waterman Trail in California's Angeles National Forest. She was last seen approximately 30 feet ahead of her hiking companion. Search operations found nothing. She remains missing. And then, McCasland, walking out of his door on February 27th, 2026, leaving everything behind and vanishing. That's when the internet exploded. Online communities looked at that list and said, "This is not random. The claim was simple and terrifying. These people knew something about advanced propulsion, about classified energy research, about non-human intelligence, and somebody with power, somebody with access, somebody with no accountability had decided they needed to disappear. One Substack writer drew direct connections between the murder of Nuno Loureiro and the death of Carl Grillmeyer, calling them part of the same pattern. A popular conspiracy account with hundreds of thousands of followers theorized that Loureiro's fusion research was so advanced, quote, potentially so transformative, that if you get a real leg up in the research, then you become a sort of database that needs to be erased. A US congressman, Representative Eric Burleson of Missouri, told Fox News publicly, "This has all the hallmarks of a foreign operation." And suddenly, this wasn't just an internet theory anymore, it was a national conversation, and if this is already making you uncomfortable, good. That means you're paying attention. Drop a comment below. Do you think this is connected, or is this just internet paranoia? I read every single one. Here's where everything escalated. On April 20th, 2026, the House Oversight Committee officially announced it would investigate the deaths and disappearances. Committee Chairman James Comer said, and this is a direct quote from a sitting US congressman, "Something sinister could be happening." He admitted he first thought it was a crazy conspiracy theory, but now he believed it could be a national security concern. The FBI confirmed it was spearheading efforts to look for connections between the missing and deceased scientists, working with the Department of Energy, the Department of Defense, and state and local law enforcement. NASA posted publicly that it was coordinating with relevant agencies. And President Donald Trump, when asked about it, said, "I just left a meeting on that subject. Pretty serious stuff. Hopefully coincidence, but some of them were very important people, and we are going to look at it." The President of the United States calling it pretty serious stuff. And in conspiracy culture, that's not reassurance, that's confirmation. Let me be direct with you. Conspiracies don't spread because people are stupid, they spread because they hit something real. And this theory arrived at the exact right moment. Trust in governments was already collapsing. Military whistleblowers had been testifying before Congress about UFOs. Declassified footage of unidentified aerial phenomena had been airing on national news. The environment was already primed. All it needed was a list of names, and one congressman willing to say it out loud. Because here's the dark math of modern information. Over 700,000 people hold top-secret clearances in US aerospace and nuclear sectors. According to researchers, based on normal mortality rates across that workforce, you would statistically expect around 250 homicides and suicides in that population over any given multi-year period. Thousands more would die of natural causes. So, finding 10 or 11 deaths and disappearances across 3 years in a population that large? Statistically, not unusual. But statistics don't go viral, fear does. But I need to stop here for a second, because behind every name on that list is a real family. Amy Eskridge was one of the names circulated online. She died in 2022 from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Online communities described her as an anti-gravity researcher and included her death as part of the pattern. Her father, Richard Eskridge, a former NASA scientist himself, came forward publicly and said, "Scientists die also, just like other people." He rejected every suggestion that her death was suspicious. Monica Razor's family said no one from the White House or the FBI had even contacted them. They rejected any suggestion that she had been working on something dangerous. One relative told a reporter she was just a regular person who had a family, and McCaslin's own wife wrote publicly on Facebook that while her husband had access to highly classified programs during his Air Force career, he had been retired for over a decade. She said it seemed quite unlikely that anyone would target him for secrets that were more than 10 years old. These are real people, real families, watching the internet turn their grief into a conspiracy thriller. If this video is hitting different for you, share it with someone who needs to see it. Because most people scroll past stories like this, and that's exactly why they keep happening. So why does a theory like this feel so convincing? Psychologists have a word for it: apophenia. The tendency to perceive meaningful connections in completely unrelated events. Medical sociologist Robert Bartholomew, who specializes in social hysteria and UFO conspiracy thinking, described the missing scientists theory as a textbook example. He said, social media postings plant the idea that there has been a coordinated attack, priming people to reinterpret random deaths and disappearances as suspicious and sinister. He compared it to other famous pattern conspiracies: the curse of Tutankhamun's tomb, the list of witnesses who died after the JFK assassination, the so-called Clinton body count. Different eras, same psychology. Michael Shermer, editor of Skeptic magazine, described what was happening as conspiracy theorists digging through bios looking for any connection to UFOs, military, defense, space, or aerospace, and inevitably finding patterns in random noise. Your brain is not broken for seeing the pattern. Your brain is doing exactly what it was built to do. It's just that the modern internet gives that instinct more fuel than it was ever designed to handle. And that brings us to the most uncomfortable truth of all. We no longer experience tragedy as tragedy. We experience it as content. Monica Razor disappears on a hiking trail. Within days, TikTok videos, Reddit threads, YouTube documentaries with ominous music. Carl Grillmere gets shot outside his home. Within hours, his name is in a Substack post connecting him to a secret government purge. Nuno Loureiro is murdered by a man with a documented personal grudge. But online, he becomes evidence of an organized elimination campaign. The Daily Mail runs a headline: "Mystery of 5 missing scientists sends chill across America." And suddenly millions of people who had never heard these names feel like they've been following the story for years. That's the machine. And once you're inside it, every new disappearance feels like the next chapter. Let's be straight. As of now, federal investigators have found no confirmed link between any of these cases. The FBI is looking, Congress is asking, the White House is watching, but no evidence of coordination has been established. The deaths and disappearances span 3 years. They involve different locations, different causes, different circumstances. Some had identified suspects with no connection to classified research. Some had known personal or medical explanations. Some remain genuinely unexplained. But here's what nobody can dismiss. We live in a world where governments have run secret weapons programs for decades without public knowledge, where intelligence agencies have conducted psychological operations on their own citizens, where corporations and military institutions have covered up deaths and buried evidence. That history is documented. It is real. So the distrust fueling this theory is not irrational. It is just being aimed at a target that may or may not exist. If past shock is the kind of channel you've been looking for, subscribe and turn on notifications, because we drop new dark history every single week. And trust me, the next one is worse than this. If this story unsettled you, that feeling is the point, because the world is full of things that were called conspiracy theories right up until the moment they became front-page news. Subscribe to Past Shock, because history's darkest chapters don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they just quietly disappear, and nobody notices until it's too late.